All right, Tyler, I hope you're on your best behavior this morning. This is fun. This is unique. We're joined this morning by the Reverend J.C. Austin, who's a senior pastor at First Presbyterian Church of Bethlehem, and Rabbi Michael Singer with Congregation Brith Sholom. Did I say that correctly? Oh, I did. In Bethlehem as well. So firstly, we wanted to thank you guys for joining us at the same time. This is really neat. And I don't know the whole story, but I know, JC, you mentioned in the email that you guys are buddies. So thank you. And yeah, we kind of wanted to get the story.
I have to say that this is like the virtual pastor and a rabbi walk into a Zoom chat.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah. We just need a priest.
I can't be the first one to say that, right? But yeah, thank you guys for coming. And it's cool to, get you guys both on. But yeah, you guys are both doing stuff with your congregations, right? Even virtually.
Absolutely. Let me take a stab at the first question that George asked, because I think it matters for this, that I've been in Bethlehem about 2 years, and Michael was one of the first people that reached out to me when I arrived here, and we had lunch and have built a friendship since then, but also have been working together with a lot of other pastors and priests, and that joke that goes on and on of everybody getting together in the Bethlehem Interfaith group. And I'll let Michael talk a little bit more about that because he's the president of that group, but it's given us a sense of community among faith leaders as we're trying to figure out how to live into this and in this moment. And so I'm grateful for him and for the others that are here in spirit, if not here visually as well. But I think we're all trying to figure out how to do this and what it means to be a community and what it means to be a community of faith when a lot of what we usually do in terms of getting together in the same room and our traditions that go back centuries or even millennia are changing just because of the circumstances, and we have to do things differently. So it's been a gift and a challenge to be in the midst of that.
Yeah, I mean, the impetus, I think, still remains at its core of what the Bethlehem Interfaith Group is all about. We want to build community, and we want to build friendships and relationships between different communities, different religious traditions here in Bethlehem. And we see it as both a way of learning about respecting each other and standing with each other, but also supporting the good works that each of the communities are doing, that we can sort of muster our strength together. And then also there's a social aspect. We actually have a book club amongst a bunch of pastors, rabbis, imams. I mean, it's great. We learn together, and we've become close, and our communities have benefited because in that process they've gotten to know each other, and we've been able to do like a Thanksgiving program at JC's church, and it was really amazing bringing people and hearing immigrant stories, having an interfaith choir together and celebrating the holiday of Thanksgiving together. So there are lots of opportunities to sort of bring us together, and now more than ever I think we really see the need for community, and that doesn't stop just because of the coronavirus. Instead, I think it amplifies exactly what it is that we do. We've had to do it in new and creative ways, but at its core, we're about bringing people together to do good things, to revive and strengthen our spirits together and connect in meaningful ways, both, I think, with God as we understand it, and also with each other. So that's our goal.
Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned, I don't know if Tyler, if you were going to ask the same thing, but regarding what you're doing currently. So if you guys could kind of talk about what happened when you realized that, wow, we're not going to be able to have people here, and how did you translate that to online?
Great. Michael, you want to go first?
Sure. So I've used Zoom for a number of years, actually through the Rabbinical Assembly, which is the conservative movement's rabbis sort of group, and as chair of the Food Justice Committee for the Rabbinical Assembly. It's an international organization, so I'm communicating with and holding meetings with rabbis both across the country, but also around the world at the same time. And so we're familiar with Zoom, and we've done our meetings in that respect. So it was a matter of now all of a sudden translating that into, well, how do we do our services now, where we have people like
every you had like morning. 5 years of practice. So you like everybody else is scrambling to figure this out. You already knew Zoom. That's great.
Well, we were online very, very quickly. We actually had our religious school online. We did that pretty fast. So for our connecting with our kids, having our teachers be able to get in and break out groups and things of that nature. We had to redo our curriculum, obviously. Passover was just wild because, people were doing Zoom Seders, and we had to figure out, like, okay, where are we going to get enough kosher food, and how are we going to deliver that to people who can't get out to get it? So we had a lot of sort of technical aspects, and we've been learning along the way in doing this. But our services, our religious school, our confirmation program was originally a cooking program with our teenagers. Well, we couldn't have them all come in to cook, so we've now doing a history of Jewish humor in America. So we're like watching like the 2,000-year-old man, and I'm able to stream a video on the Zoom and stuff like that. And we did the Marx Brothers duck soup and other kinds of stuff that we're working with. So we've had to get creative. And even though we have a Jew Brew Crew where we make our own beer here, we haven't been able to obviously get together to drink that beer, but we've had like a Tuesday social hour where everyone's sort of brought hors d'oeuvres and beer and whatever they'd like to drink to the party. And it's a way of keeping people connected. So we feel that keeping people connected is really our number one priority. And also, we created immediately a group of people to look after a number of our members who aren't technically savvy, or maybe just are in need. They need a phone call. They need someone maybe just to like come by and sit in their car and just wave at them for a little bit. But we needed people to really connect, especially with the most vulnerable in our community. I think for me, and maybe JC will say a little more about this, the hardest part has been funerals.
Yeah.
There is no Zoom solution to someone losing a loved one to this virus, and having to do funerals without a community there to support the mourner, and even the ritual itself is very, very hard.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think our story is pretty similar. When we saw this coming and realized that this was going to pretty much change everything, we were already moving towards doing live streaming in our worship. So we had a little bit of a leg up there. We actually do our services on Facebook Live. We do pretty much everything else on Zoom, but we do our services on Facebook Live. And that first Sunday, we were wondering, is this really going to work? Are people going to show up? Are people going to engage? And what we found is that social media really is social, that it can bring people together. As problematic as it can be at times, it can also be a really powerful engine for creating and maintaining community, which really is what's so desperately needed right now. And so we have people, I think, living out some fantasies at this point of being able to talk back in the middle of services and have comments with one another and not disturbing anybody. And so it's actually become really beautiful. There's parts of our service where people do interact and wish the peace of Christ with one another, where they offer prayer requests. And so it's a moment to really come together in spirit, as we say, if we can't come together in the same room. And so a lot of our folks, I think, have been surprised at how meaningful some of this can be. And part of that is the technology allows for things that we couldn't have done even 5 or 10 years ago. And part of it is that some of us haven't fully lived into this yet. And so we've got, 90-year-old folks who really have just signed up for email addresses that are now getting on Zoom and talking with one another, raising their hands virtually, and, those kinds of things. So there's been some beautiful learning there. We did a similar piece in terms of recruiting what we called tech buddies to go with people who are less, adept on technology and social media to help them figure out how to do that. And we also have a group in our congregation that don't have the hardware to really access Zoom or some of these other things. And so we've had to come up with solutions for them to be able to call in and listen to the services. We've been having our teams of caregivers calling them just to check in and see how they're doing. And so I would say, George, the biggest thing with this has been creativity and intentionality. We've had to kind of figure out what we do naturally and then translate that into something that actually works under these circumstances. And I would agree the hardest thing by far is certainly funerals, because just what we normally do just really doesn't translate onto this. And so much of what happens when somebody's grieving, when you think about it, is physical. You know, you're putting your arms around people, you're touching people on the back, you're joining together in meals before or afterwards, and to not have that is really hard, I think. And so we've done some small services where we could get just a few people together and keep them physically pretty far apart. But what we're finding a lot of people doing is really doing something small now, even if it's just a prayer service with 1 or 2 people, and waiting to do something when we could get people back together again to really celebrate the life of the person who's died.
Yeah. Well, number one, I just want to say I think it's cool that there's this, community where everybody's kind of together, all revolving around, just having faith in something. And whether it's the rabbi, there's you guys are all kind of on the same team, right?
Right. Right.
There's people out there that, they get scared with religion. Like there's a little scared of religion for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But could you maybe say something is there anything that either of you guys offer that may be geared towards somebody that's struggling with religion, or maybe
just not religious at all?
Isn't religious at all. Yeah.
I think that for us, one of the main themes through all of this has been, we're doing what we're doing out of love, not out of fear. That we are staying home. We're keeping our distance from one another out of love for the other. And our tradition, Jesus talks over and over about loving others as we love ourselves, loving our neighbors, even loving our enemies. And, love is at the core of our faith, but it's certainly not unique to Christianity. Love is basic to being human. And adopting an ethic of love in the midst of this, I think, isn't just the right thing to do because it's taking care of ourselves and protecting others. It's also what lets us hold on to our humanity. I would say that's because that's what God created us to be, and we're living into that. But you don't have to believe that to know the fruits of love and to be able to share that with others and to see the value in that. And that's something, I think, there's so many different things that are dividing us right now. That's something that we really all can come together and speak out of our own truth and yet still hold that in common.
I agree. And I would add also that I don't think you would ask any one of us if we have all the answers. That's not what we're in the business of, giving the answers. I think we're about asking the deep questions. So I think our traditions within themselves, there's a sense of humility in understanding that there's a great mystery out there as well, and that we don't necessarily have all of the answers, but that instead it's about trying to ask those questions, and at the end of the day, recognizing that there indeed is something greater than ourselves. However we might imagine that to be, there is something that is greater than any one of us, and we can see that in the world in which we are now. We're all doing what we in Hebrew is called tzimtzum. It's literally sort of pulling back a little to make space for others. We're self-distancing in order to make space so that other people can remain healthy and well. We're part of a community, we're part of a country, we're part of a world that is united by our humanity and by the creation and the world in which we live. And therefore, we have to make space for one another. And that means, recognizing that there are things that are greater than just any one of us. And so I think that we share that. I think no matter who we are, I think anyone can recognize that human beings didn't make the world. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. That it can't be more plain than that we are on this little blue marble in the cosmos, and that we have a responsibility to care for it, and we certainly didn't create it. Right. So no matter what you believe, at least we all hold that this world is a gift that we didn't make, and therefore we don't own it, but we have to care for it, and therefore we have to care for each other too. And so that's kind of where we at. And again, I don't think we have to have every answer. I think the questions matter.
You talk about responsibility, and I know that some of this is very fringe, but it has made national news. So with some of these, religious leaders in other areas who have said, no, we have to come together. We have to meet. They've been arrested and whatnot. What do you say to that? Because it obviously is not positive news, and I'm sure it's not something that you want to see in the news. So what is your response?
Also, I'm sure everybody wants to meet,
right?
We all, and your people want to come see you in person. You want to see them, but there's people that are doing it despite, calls to do the opposite. So what's your approach? Like, what's your mentality going with that?
Well, I think what I said about love is really what's guiding us through all of this. And yes, we do have to gather together, and yes, we do have to meet, but we don't have to do that in the physical presence of one another. That's preferable, but there's certainly nothing in Scripture that requires that. It's for us, Christianity is very much a team sport. It's not, it's not something you can do only on your own. You do it inevitably in community. But we're finding community really powerfully in all kinds of different ways that don't require us coming together and putting one another at risk. And I don't know what's motivating some of those gatherings. I think spiritually that my concern is that there's almost an element of well, my faith will protect me and Jesus will protect me. And those things are true. And yet we also wear seatbelts and, watch what we eat and, exercise and, all kinds of other things. And Jesus himself talked more than once about not putting God to the test. So I think doing those things is missing the point of what it means to be in Christian community. It's not about packing as many people as you can in the room. It's about gathering together and sharing our faith and helping one another in good times and in bad. And that's what we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, in Judaism, the concept of pikuach nefesh, or the preservation of life, is first and foremost. In fact, in much of a Jewish tradition, you can violate, like you could eat pork if that was all you had to eat and it was what was going to keep you alive. The idea of being able to recognize the gift of life, and that takes precedence over a lot of other rituals and religious ideas, and it is it's really important to understand that there have always been cases throughout Jewish history where there have been epidemics and plagues. I'm reminded of a story of one of the great Hasidic rabbis who on Yom Kippur, one of the most solemn days in the Jewish calendar, where we refrain from eating and drinking for 25 hours. There had been a disease, a plague, an epidemic that had gone through his community, and he realized that if the members of his community had fasted on Yom Kippur, the holiest day, that in essence, if he had done that, the people would have been weakened and susceptible to the disease. So he walks into the synagogue on Kol Nidre night, the Erev Yom Kippur, and he has a bucket of chicken, and he's the rabbi, and he's eating the chicken, and all of the Hasidim are saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He says, "The Torah says you live by the law and not die by the law." And this year we will eat on Yom Kippur, and we will still pray for forgiveness, and next year, God willing, we will be able to return to our tradition.
Yeah, it's important. And I
love this because I'm getting goosebumps. It's nice. I agree. It's having community because, even people who aren't social, I've talked, just not having those people around them, it does eventually kind of get to you. So this is great. Even talking to you guys today it keeps that motivation up, and you kind of remember why we're getting up and doing stuff every day.
Well, yeah. I mean, George, we've done 100 of these calls, and not that I never felt a sense of community around here prior to this, but after doing the, however many Zoom calls we've done, it's almost like, wow, there is you notice it more. However, you don't see anybody from the community. It's kind of like this weird paradox where you're learning more by less, do you think going forward?
And we'll wrap up. We'll get you out of here because we know you guys are busy. So we'll finish up.
Do you think that the structure of the way that you're handling things now, doing things more virtually, number one, can strengthen your congregations going forward? And is it something that might be another option for your services, even if there isn't a virus or a pandemic?
So, I mean,
go ahead,
okay.
Michael.
Okay. So I feel like right now this is what's keeping the community connected, and I think it's vital and important. And I just thank God that we live in a time where this technology is at the point where we can actually do this. Again, as JC was saying, if it was 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, forget it. I mean, we would have been dial up, and it would have, it would have been weird. So I think we are blessed to be able to have this technology. At the same time, man, we like to eat. I mean, like, people come to the synagogue because we have like some really good food, and and that's part of the labor of love that our services and our faith is kind of about. And so, there's that social connection, and I think people really miss that. And I think as soon as this is over and we're able to kind of come back together in a safe and responsible way, that we're gonna eat, and
Can Tyler and I come to the Brew Club?
Absolutely.
That sounds like a good time.
I like it.
It is. Yeah.
And JC, do you see you continuing to use some of this technology, moving forward?
Yeah. I think for sure we'll keep doing it. I think it's really a both and. I mean, we're all eager to get back to a moment where we can all be together physically, but I think we don't want to go back. We want to go forward into a new moment where we can be doing those things and be celebrating those. And Tyler was saying, you become aware of these things when you're having to be intentional about them. And that's been a real gift. And I think we'll be aware of what we were kind of taking for granted on some level about just easily being able to come together. But we were already moving towards live streaming before any of this happened, in part because it's something that helps us connect with people who, for one reason or another, can't get to services physically. They may be shut in. They may just be working at different times and can't come in at that point. We're reaching people that are literally all over the country, being able to do this now in a way that we couldn't before. And I think we're being able to connect with folks who wouldn't necessarily walk through the front door of a big church building, and you were talking about people that don't have their whole faith system sorted out, and a church can be intimidating. But this is something where you can click on it and say, oh wait, I kind of like this. These are people just like me, asking questions like I am, trying to come together in community. And so I think we're going to be doing both of those things. We'll be using Zoom in some ways that we haven't before, I think, to be able to make meetings and programs easier, but we'll also be doing things in person. So I think it's something that's just going to end up enhancing us and our ability to be a more faithful and a better community as a faith community.
It's great. And we know you guys are busy, so we want to say thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
this has been a special one for us.
I gotta thank, it's super cool. No matter what people believe in, that it's just we're on Zoom and we have a priest and a rabbi to get it's just
not Reverend,
kind of like a cool moment. I would this virtual moment.
If you had told me a month ago, this is what we would be doing on Monday at whatever time it is, I'd be like, okay, that sounds like a good movie. But no, it's fantastic. And hopefully maybe when this is all over, we can connect.
That'd be great. We'd love to do that.
Yeah,
awesome.
We'll have a beer together. It'll be
great.
good.
I'm in. Yeah. I got to turn that down. Getting the rabbis inviting us over for a beer.
Yeah, I can't compete with that, so we'll just all have to go over to the Jew Brew Crew.
Yeah, I like it.
All good. All right, thank you guys so much. We'll make sure all the information is in the notes so people can find out more about.
Can I have one more piece, though?
Please.
The Interfaith Group on May the 7th is having a hour of prayer together. This hopefully will be streamed on either Facebook or on YouTube, but on May the 7th at noon, from noon to 1, the Bethlehem Interfaith Group, representing all of the different 13 different communities that are part of it. We're going to have that day of prayer and hour of prayer, and we hope people will tune in.
That'll be on Facebook?
Most likely on Facebook. Yep. We'll be streaming on Facebook, and for the communities themselves, it'll be available via a Zoom link.
Okay. And let's just,
we'll have
before
that
we go, the best spot for people to go connect with you and it would be Facebook, or is it, do you have a website?
For our congregation, it would be either our Facebook page or our website. Our website's fpc-bethlehem.org, and the web and Facebook is great as well. And we're very much living through both of those things.
Cool.
Yeah. Same for us. We have both Facebook page and a website, and people can check out our offerings there.
Okay, great. And George, put the links in there. Thank you guys so much. This was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Have a great day. This is really great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.